Welcome, everyone. I just wanted to take this time while I'm sitting here in my obviously not so organized office just to make a short video about how easy it really is to get data input. In this particular case, we're going to use integers into a vector until you get a specific value entered. And that value we normally refer to as a sentinel, and it's set up as a constant integer. You can call it whatever you want, but the term sentinel normally means an ending of something. So first thing I want to do is I have IOStream and vectors. Since we're going to be using vectors, then we obviously need to include vector in here. We don't really need anything else for this, but I want to do a little bit different. Instead of doing the using namespace standard that is normal, what I'm going to do here is show you an alternative doing it, and we're only going to include the few things that we actually need. So first of all, since we're going to get input, we need to use cin, and we need to give the user a prompt, so we need to use cout, and then we need to include vector, since vector is part of the standard library. I'm going to leave one out and leave it at the end so the video so you can see if you get this, how you can correct it. So let's start off with using. Now you don't want to type in using namespace. All you need to do is type in using std, 2 colons, and then we'll do cin first. Then we'll do using cout, and then we'll do using vector. So that allows us to create our vectors. Now let's create our sentinel. So we're going to do a constant integer, and I'm going to call it sentinel. Hopefully I spelled it right. And we'll set it at -999. So the next thing we need to do is create our vector, and we need to create a way to get data input until we get that sentinel. So let me take my caps locks off here. Now notice that the constant is in all capital letters, which signifies that it's something that cannot be changed in an easy way to recognize it. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up my vector. For no other reason, that's just the way I feel like doing it. And so we want a vector. What type do we want? We want int. And we need a name. Now my personal preference is to put each vector as beginning with a V, so I know it's a vector, and then do camel case after that. So the V is the first word, and that lets me know that this is going to be a vector. That's just my personal way of doing things. We don't need to add any numbers here right now. So now we have V, and let's make it numbers. And the next thing we need is an integer to get the number. And I always initialize it. So remember, it's always a good idea to comment what the variable is going to be used. We'll hold the numbers for data input. And then we want a Boolean to determine whether or not we're going to process it. So you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. And again, I'm going to initialize it to true, and then determines whether or not to process the input. So these are simple terms that will help you identify your code next time you look at it, what all these things are used for. So let's go with a simple do loop. And it's actually a do while loop. Do loop is a term left over from Fortran programming languages. So we want while, and then simple process. So we're going to keep doing this to process, and we'll determine what process is shortly. So the first thing we want to do is give the user a good prompt. So we'll do cout, and we'll type in enter a number, and then we tell the user what we need to do in case of the sentinel in here. Now you don't want to put in the -999 in the prompt itself, because what happens if later on you change the sentinel to something different? So let's just put in it here. Little extra typing, but it's well worth it. And then we'll go and notice a space, 2, and input, a space, and no end line at the end of the prompt. And then we're going to go and do cin, and we'll do num. So that's kind of simple. We could have made it 1 num. We could have made it whatever we wanted to do. So now what we need to do is determine if the number is going to get input into the vector or we're going to end it. So that's very simple. We just check out process equals and then a simple statement. So process equals that num does not equal sentinel. In other words, if it's sentinel, we're not going to process it, but if it's not sentinel, then we will. So now what we need to do is make sure we don't process if you type in sentinel, because right now we'll keep getting numbers in here until we get the -999, and then of course it's going to say, oh, process is false, we're going to exit. If we just do a simple push back here, we're going to get the -999 in there. So what we'll do, if process, and notice I'm not putting if process equals true, and I didn't put if num equals sentinel, process equals true, else process equals false. This is the preferred way of doing it in one simple statement. So then if process, which basically means if process is true, then what we'll do is push back. And what do we want to push back? We want to push back, actually we need to do the numbers. And what are we pushing back? We need to push back num. And hopefully our red line will go away. And it does. So this should do everything. And then we will put a simple thing that just tells us how many we entered. So let's just go cout you entered. And that's simple. We have the size. So we'll do v numbers dot size, and then we'll do numbers, and this little space here, we really don't need a space. And then let's do our end line, and we're going to get an error. Okay, why are we getting this error? And it's because the program does not know what end line is. So we just go back up here, and we do using std end line. So that saves you having to type in std end line every single time you do it. So let's go and run this with, say, 4 numbers, and hopefully it works. Then we'll print out the numbers. So let's try 5, 10, 2, 17, and 33. So now we're going to hit -999. Oops. And if I did it right, we should only have 5 numbers. You entered 5 numbers. That's good. Now let's just go and print them really quickly. So we're going to do 4. Now we can type in int, and I'll just call it 1 num, and print them out. And what do we want to do? We want to get from v numbers. Now here's a little trick too. I always, every time I have an opening bracket and a closing bracket, I always put what it's for. I didn't do it in this particular case because it already has while. So I'm not really worried about that, that I know that this is simply part of the do. But here we have the if, so I'm going to add this. So now we have added the if to that bracket. When you delete a bracket or you forget a bracket, this is really going to pay you big dividends. It's very easy to find what's missing. So let's go and just print them. So we'll just do cout. And we'll do 1 num. and end line. You also don't have to put it in. If you don't know the type, you can do auto. So let's just do auto here, and let's run this and see if it all works. Hopefully it will. So we'll do 5, 22, 5, 5, 5, 1, 2, 3, minus 40, 75, 100, and then we'll do our minus 999. So if everything works out good, we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers. It should print all 7 numbers. You enter 7 numbers, 5, 22, 5, 5, 5. So this looks good, and that's all there is to it. So in recap, remember, if you didn't put in if process here, what would happen is the minus 999 would get put into the back of V numbers. And that is it for this video. Oh, I certainly hope that it helped you clear a few things up. You can use this. I'll be making another video on getting a yes or no answer with a way to verify it. That'll be useful if you want to exit the program and you accidentally hit yes or you hit no or whatever it is. Here you can have a chance to verify, yeah, I really want to do this. So that is it for this video. Please leave comments. Let me know what you think and look forward to seeing you next.